Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Patti Martin Real Estate Group YouTube channel. We're going to switch it up a little bit this month. We're going to be joined by our colleague and teammate, Jennifer Adams. How you doing, Jen?
I'm very well. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today.
You're very welcome. You have a lot of insight that I'd like to share with some people, so I think it's a good person to have on the episode today. Let's jump into it, because today I wanted to do a little bit of a different episode. I don't necessarily want to talk about December stats. I think in December, people go on holiday, their minds are elsewhere. The stats aren't really indicative of what's happening in the market as a whole. But if we break it down as what happened throughout the year, I think that can give some people an insight on what to expect next year, how to prepare their financials and their plans to get back into the housing market if it's the right time for them. So the Vancouver market, they came out and said that the housing market closed out in 2023 with a balanced market, but the year-end totals mask a story of surprising resilience in the face of the highest borrowing costs seen in over a decade. What do you think about that comment?
I think it's fairly accurate, actually. I think that although we ended with a balanced market, we had, for the most part, sellers markets. So we saw incredible activity starting in the second quarter. Like April was absolutely a flurry of activity, and it was fairly consistent. We saw lots of sales, certainly in our office, and kind of culminating in July. I remember trying to take holidays, and that wasn't really part of the realtor plan this July. It was a really, really busy time. And then when I think back to the year, we really started to notice a shift in September. This, of course, was due to some rate changes, right? We saw significant rate changes kind of coming in the fall. And then a real slowdown in November. And then, of course, as you described, December.
Yeah, as
for
we
sure.
got that late fall December market.
Yeah.
I reflect back to my sentiment and even my client sentiment in early 2023 when we were just beginning the year. And I kept saying to people and my clients that I was quite optimistic about the Vancouver housing market just because the macroeconomics were still favorable for buyers and sellers. Like undersupplied, the cost to build is still very expensive. The speed of housing to market is still really slow. That yes, your purchasing power is down, your borrowing costs are up, but in the long run, which is real estate now, it's the long game. It's still a good place to live. It's still a good place to buy. But there was this pervasive sentiment in the market that was just, now's not a good time. Do you concur?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors. I mean, if you watch global, national news, actually, if you watch national news, you're getting this snapshot of the Canadian real estate market, and we continue to see Vancouver operating as, its own market, its own micro market.
Yeah, it's almost an outlier.
It is an outlier to a certain extent. And although we are affected by all of the pressures that, affect everyone nationally, interest rates and all these kinds of things, immigration and all that kind of stuff, we have been living and working in an under-inventoried market for many years, and we continue to do so. So, as we turn the corner, as we are making our way into this new year, we are going to continue to operate underneath that. So, while there are so many things that are going to affect the market, this idea of it being under inventoried continues among us, no matter what provincial and federal governments are doing. And they're trying to make affordability a word we can use in conjunction with Vancouver real estate. But there is a long way to go, and this kind of a thing takes a lot of time. So all of these policies that are being implemented, it's not going to happen overnight. People need to understand that, buying Vancouver real estate, when you look at the long term, as you suggest, it is this constant.
Yeah, it's like a slow, gradual rise.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to do is put that theory to the test now. So let's look at some of the sales that happened in December and compare them to the previous years.
Okay.
The real estate board has come out and said that residential sales in the region, so all of Metro Vancouver, totaled 26,000 and change in 2023, a 10% decrease from the 29,000 and change from 2022. but a 41% decrease from 2021. Did we feel that throughout the year? And do you think there's a particular reason for such a massive drop compared to 2021?
Oh, this is such a nuanced
An
thing.
open-ended question.
Yeah, and it's such a complicated and nuanced thing to talk about. So, we saw a lot of multiple offers this year. And what that tells me is there is an appetite for buyers, and there's not enough product because there are people competing for our listings. I mean, if you think back to like those months I'm talking about, that April, May, I mean, almost everything we sold had a multiple offer going on it.
Yeah.
We had,
Despite higher borrowing costs, and there was still multiple offers.
And despite the hesitation we know exists in the market, because even for those listings that had multiple offers, where we would actually receive those offers, we had a lot of agents saying to us, "Listen, I'm sorry, my client just doesn't want to compete. Where they're sitting on the fence." So we had a lot of this idea of sitting on the fence happening in 2023.
Yeah, even with the fewer sales, prices still managed to go up throughout the year on average about 5% across all municipalities. So it still shows you that even when you're competing, you still have higher borrowing costs. People are still prepared to pay and get into the Vancouver market. For a long-term hold, one, it's your home first and foremost, but two, you can see it as an investment even in difficult markets. Markets where it should be more balanced or favor buyers, prices are still increasing. I think a lot of that has to do with inventory. So that's a good segue here. When we look at properties that were listed in Metro Vancouver throughout the year, we had almost 51,000 in 2023, 7.5% decrease from the 55,000 listed in 2022, but a 20% decrease from the 64,000 listed in 2021. So we had substantially fewer listings that these buyers are competing for. Is that the reason for the price increases? Is that going to shape our market going into 2024? What are your thoughts on that, Jen?
I do think as mortgage renewals continue to come up and people are faced with these higher borrowing costs, I do feel like we are going to see more inventory. Will the inventory level rise enough to affect the market, to affect prices, to affect a downward push? Maybe, and that's if it happens quickly in the first quarter. And I think the best deals of 2024, and this might be a crazy bold prediction, and we might look back on this if you talk to me next January, and we're going to laugh at one another and say, boy, was she ever wrong. But I have this sneaking suspicion that because there is still hesitation in the market, however, we know that people are under this kind of extraordinary mortgage pressure. There's this talk about a reduction in all the Airbnb kind of income that people can take. And we're going to see more inventory, especially in the attached market coming up. So I think your best bet for my prediction is we are going to turn around and say, wow, even though the borrowing costs were still a little bit higher, if I take a short-term mortgage, but I bought at the beginning of 2024, wow, I got a good deal.
I agree with you. I think that in the first 4 months or so of the year, you're going to have your best deals. Like you're going to see homes that have been listed for a while from maybe October, November. They're still on the market. People will be negotiable before the expected anticipated rate reduction. I think this is where I kind of divert from your opinion. And this is where we're going to have to come back to it in a year and test. With about 50% of homeowners in Metro Vancouver who don't have a mortgage, I don't think there's a rush to sell. I do think that you will have more inventory on the attached market, not necessarily because of the Airbnb policy. I don't think that was a big segment of our market. I do think that people borrowed a lot to get it into the investment market and are now over leveraged and just can't carry the cost for a full-time tenant. So those people might come onto the market. If I'm going to be conservative here, if we saw 64,000 listings in 2021, we only saw about 51,000 listings in 2023. I'm going to say as a whole, you're going to be right around that 60,000 mark. I think there will be more activity. There will be more listings. I don't think there will be enough to really put a downward pressure on pricing this year. With more inventory, but then the anticipated rate reduction, I think you're going to see more buyers to the market, and we're already drastically undersupplied on housing, probably for the past 10 years. I think that's going to put a little bit of an upward pressure, 4 to 6% this year is my prediction.
Okay, I get it. I think that stat is really interesting, that you mentioned about 50% of Vancouver homeowners not having a mortgage. I wonder if that is more in the detached market versus in that sector, which we consider now the more affordable sector, being condos, let's call them. That's kind of where I think those deals I think are going to happen, because there's a chance for that to have a little bit more inventory. I don't really see this affordability happening in the detached market. That's
affordability is also a relative term.
Indeed. And further to what you just said, I think that we can't underestimate how immigration continues, and unless the government calls out that we are in a full-blown recession, which they're not saying that we're in a full-blown recession, we will still have international people wanting to come and move here. They hear about the Vancouver livability. We just made another poll where we were one of the most livable cities again, despite the affordability problem. So I just think that if immigration continues at the same pace, and we know housing starts are not continuing at the same pace, no matter, even if we see a so-called rise in inventory, all it will do is kind of be mopped up by the current buyers or people that find themselves in an economic position where they can finally get into the market for whatever reason.
Yeah, I agree. Canada is anticipated to bring in 1 million people in the coming year. According to the quarter 3 by StatsCan, they said 177,000 people came to BC alone in 2023. BC needs to build about 80 to 100,000 homes a year just to meet an equilibrium, not the incoming people. So if we're talking about macroeconomics, you're absolutely right. The inventory just isn't there. The government of Canada, but they've trying to introduce a new housing policy. And this is one that's meant to bring more inventory to the market to help offset that supply-demand imbalance. Essentially what they're saying is that any detached lot, you will be able to build 4, 5, 6, if it's big enough, 8 homes on it. Do you think that this is going to work? We had a good conversation about this off camera. I think we're both quite opinionated about it. And I would like to share some of that insight with our audience here, because this is going to segue into our predictions into 2024. So why don't we start with this new housing policy? What do you think about it, Jen?
Oh gosh. Again, a lot to say about this. So I feel that the government is trying, and they're trying to come up with innovative ways to create more roofs over Canadians' heads. And I think there is quite a lot of risk for the average person to purchase a lot, build a 4 or 6-plex on it, try to make that a cash flow positive situation after the costs for building. So unless you're in a very stable position in terms of how much equity you already will have in that property, I think it's a relatively risky risky thing for the average person to do. I think that if you're a builder, I think if you can find some land and make it happen and keep your costs down, I think builders might win in this situation, and we may have more units, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how the average Canadian will take this opportunity and make this huge difference. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a well-intended policy. Everybody wants more homes. There's no question about it. We need more homes. I think it's a good way to get more homes to the market for that missing middle. There's a lot of homes that we need that people that aren't stratified, right? Not everybody can afford a detached. Not everybody wants to live in a strata property. There's $400, $500 a month to a strata fee that if that can go directly to your house, you can get into more house. Where I think the government, let me back up. I don't think this is going to affect our housing market in 2024 or 2025. I think by the time these plans get implemented and the kinks get worked out and they actually start building, it's not going to affect our market until about 2026. Having said that, building 4 homes on one lot, if you work out the numbers, I don't think it's going to provide windfall gains that a builder is going to go, I want that lot, these 4 homes, I can charge so much more for them, because if you can only build 1,200, 1,400 for a, per little home, and you're building 4 of them on a lot, how much can you sell a 1,400 square foot home for?
Yeah.
You can only sell it for a certain amount.
Yeah.
And that amount has to be more than your building costs and purchasing costs. So the numbers have to work out. The issues that I see right here are, you have to increase the speed of the approval from the city. The city might have to incentivize the builder with fewer permitting costs. Now it makes sense. So you lower your taxes there, and then that gets hopefully passed on to the buyer. But also the infrastructure that you now need to build. So water lines, sewer lines, schools, shopping centers, hospitals, you still need the services for everybody that's moving into a neighborhood. So again, a very well-intended plan. When we look at the broader scale, imagine putting 10,000 people into Shaughnessy right now.
Yes. Yeah. The infrastructure.
I'm just throwing numbers
can't.
out there. That's a lot of people that,
yeah.
Where are they going to shop? Where are they going to bank? All the traffic, the parking, you can see how this just snowballs.
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention, I think that we will, despite the policy change, have a lot of resistance. I think that, people that own in those neighborhoods are going to just be so resistant to it. And, do you want to be purchasing in a neighborhood that darn well is absolutely resistant to you moving in there? And you're almost like a pariah in the neighborhood because you've been the person to kind of purchase in this 4 or 6-plex, and you're just not welcome. That's awful, isn't it? Yeah. So I agree. I think it's going to take some time for that to even be noticed in the market.
I want to change gears here a little bit. Last 2 comments, and then we'll wrap this one up because there's a lot of information. I want to talk about inflation and mortgage. So I think those are the 2 things that are really affecting both buyers and sellers right now. The Bank of Canada has kind of come out softly. I think more the banks have come out and said that they are anticipating, a full 1% drop in interest rates. So let's be conservative and say it's about a 0.25 drop to a 0.75 drop. Do you think that's going to happen, and do you think it's going to be beneficial to the market?
Okay, this is the bold predictions part.
This is the bold prediction.
I think that every time we see an interest rate drop, we can basically guarantee that even if it's psychological, it removes hesitation, and people start to, if there has been some pent up demand, people start to consider, oh my gosh, I've this, there's this rate drop. I think I need to buy. I think this is the time to buy. And I think that, if we do see this rate drop in the middle of the year, which I think that is essentially when we we can feel a bit more confident, like kind of this idea that, in summer or something like that, we are going to see these rate drops. I do. I think, that word beneficial for the market, I think it will have a lot of people come off the fence because they're going to think, oh, this is my time. I'm going to purchase now. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. I think the hesitation will be the minute you drop rates, people will start spending more, and then that'll spur more inflation. So I think this is my prediction. I think our rate drops will be later in the year, and I think they'll be minimal. I think our goal will be to have inflation around that 3% now. Just there's so many more people. There's so much more purchasing power. There's more jobs here. Like the target goal of that 2.5% inflation, I think that's going to be bumped up just as a minimum threshold to about 3%. The rates are coming down, but it's going to be slow and long. Last comment here. Mortgage rates. We know that if inflation can come down, bond yields can come down, fixed mortgage rates can come down. Right now, our office has been able to get people into a 6-month fixed rate of 4.74, 5-year fixed at 5.04, and a variable rate at 6.3. Everybody's situation is different.
Yes.
What do you feel is a good play here for a mortgage from a realtor perspective? You're not a mortgage broker. This is not mortgage advice. This is just hey, what's your opinion? You're my realtor.
Yeah. So, we've talked about a lot of things today. We've talked about all the different factors that can affect the market and these kinds of things. But the really key thing is that when it's the right time for you to purchase real estate, it's the right time, regardless of all the factors. If the numbers kind of add up for you, making a purchase in the Vancouver real estate market is a good idea. So when we see rates like this, my opinion is you get in when the prices are so-called a little bit lower, like at the beginning of this year, and then you take a mortgage that is just not a long-term mortgage. Because and I'm not suggesting anybody gets in here and hedges bets and takes huge risks. I think we do make all these decisions with our eyes wide open and, with the potential for all sorts of things to take place. But, if I'm advising a client right now, I'm definitely not telling them to lock in for a 5-year mortgage at these rates. We're telling them to work with your lender, try to achieve, of course, the lowest interest rate, but for a shorter term. And that way, when you go to renew, you're hopefully going to kind of reap those benefits. But the key would be to get in now when the prices hopefully are a little bit less than when everybody else is purchasing later this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. As a buyer, you're looking for the long-term play. Get into a home that works for you financially, works for your family, works for you long-term. If you think rates are going to come down more than that 1%, like if 5-year fixed is 5% and right now variable is at 6.3, get a variable rate. If you think rates are going to come down, get a variable rate, then it'll go down with the market. That's a lot of information for today. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Do you have any last minute optimistic comments, bold predictions for 2024 real estate market?
Firstly, I just would like to, thank you for having me on the podcast. I really enjoyed our chat today. Bold predictions. I do think at the end of the day, people need to buy and sell real estate because humans experience transition. So we have births and deaths and marriages and breakups and a lot of things that factor in beyond inflation and mortgage rates and these types of things. So at the end of the day, there will be a lot of property that exchanges, and I just hope that people work with real estate professionals that they can trust and rely on, and that will go to bat for them. And I think that it'll be another busy year for all of us on the team.
That's a good thing. Wishing you the best in 2024, Jen. I hope you have a successful year advising your clients to help them make good decisions in any real estate market.
Exactly. And to you, all the best.
Have
Thanks a
great
lot.
day.